agenda and looks to be super topical, as there are so many people who have actually registered and joined this webinar on how can Agentic AI shape the future of your non-profit. So I'm joined today by James Glover, who's our CTO. I'm Tori Cassie, Director of Nonprofit, and I'm really just going to be topping and tailing this webinar for the next 30 minutes. So we're not really going to introduce much about who mhance are. We've got a mixture of clients on the call and new non-profits. So there is a Q&A panel on the right hand side, so if you have any questions, please pop it in there and I will do my best to answer it. We're going to be talking about Agentic AI, so we're going to start off really explaining what Agentic AI is. We're going to look at how the nonprofit can use Agentic AI with some examples, and then James is going to show a few screenshots on slides, but then he's going to go into the solution and go through some scenarios. So we've got 30 minutes. Please do ask questions in the chat, and hopefully we'll be wrapped up by 10:30. So I'll hand over to James. He's going to talk more about Agentic AI in the sector. Thanks, James.
Thank you, Tori. Yeah, so this is literally a really brief introduction to Agentic AI, and a lot of it is to kind of get past some of the buzzword bingo that's going on at the moment, especially around AI, agent AI, agent force. It's like everyone has a different angle on how they're describing what AI actually is. So we wanted to kind of get back to what it actually means to you as an organization and how it can help you. And I think that's the kind of the key thing where we were trying to achieve today, is just get past some of the kind of mysticals of what it actually is. So best way to think of Agentic AI is, depending on who's selling it to you, it could be called Agentic AI, it could be called AI agents, it could be called a number of things, but it's the whole concept of having an autonomous decision making or autonomous research going on your behalf. In this particular scenario we're going through today, I'll be focusing more on probably best described as human in the loop Agentic AI. The purpose of it, making decisions, finding data out, but not necessarily doing the final interaction. Even though that's perfectly possible, and the tools I'm going to be showing you today can do that whole interaction, talking to people, there's a pragmatism here of how we just need to gradually lean into Agentic AI to make it viable for what you need to do as an organization. So Agentic AI, in this capacity, as we're a Microsoft house, we're predominantly talking Copilot, but there's so many different AI engines out there, but that's the ones we'll be talking about today. So key thing is, it's a autonomous decision that's being used to make your life easier. That's the best way to think of it. Whether it's think of it as an intern doing a research on a donor or organization, or it could be a caseworker just doing some research and finding out how to solve a problem for one of your supporters, or answering questions that would be quite an easy task for a human to do. That's the best way to think about it. It's picking off the low level stuff that just takes time, and that's where we start getting some of the benefits from this in terms of how we can be more proactive as an organization, because we're not doing the day-to-day admin, we're leaving AI to do the day-to-day admin, and we're utilizing the tools to make us more productive and do the stuff that's interesting and strategic. So over the years, we've always had traditional AI. So we've had AI, believe it or not, for 50 years now. A lot of people think it was invented 3 years ago as ChatGPT, but we've always had an AI. It's always been there. It was always very much rules-based or machine learning, working out how things happened, character recognition, all of that stuff was just AI. But really, if you look at the kind of marketing buzzwords at the moment, most people believe AI only really came out when ChatGPT came out. What happened at that particular point, it became consumable to the mass market. So everybody was suddenly using it and understood the context behind it. And that's the difference. It became an end user tool, where before it was a developer pro code tool. Now, everybody can use ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or one of the other many AI agents to do some work around their particular day job. So where we're trying to get to here is just explaining that it's just an evolution. And it's a constantly moving evolution as we kind of move through that. So Agentic AI is the agent-focused elements using a combination of large language models and kind of orchestrations, which we'll get onto first as we start showing some actual product. So in here, before we kind of get too deep into it, we wanted to kind of walk through just some of the statistics that really why you should be looking at Agentic AI in your particular organization. So good classic example here, conversion rates, donor conversion rates, the ability of having a automated donation experience that's asking different donation values, optimizing the forms based on payment platforms or the mobile phone you're on, deciding actually who you are and doing some research on you in real time to ask for those different values does naturally lead to better conversion rates. It does understand those areas. Even down to email engagement, looking at how we could tailor the content per individual, using tools now to maybe have different messaging, different wording, all based on the level of interaction that person's been having with the non-profit. Other things here, just donor retention, because we're sending more targeted messaging, we're not sending the bland here we are message, which we're focusing at the individual. It's improving donor retention. And as we go down this list here, you'll see some of the other key things as how it's doing it. But the most interesting one for me is the admin workload. That's the noise. Even if we ignored every statistic on this page, removing that administrative noise from the non-profit is key, because it means we can be using those skills to do good rather than doing admin. And that's where we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to a point where it's making your life just that bit easier. So how we could potentially use this, I want to look at some of the scenarios we've got within the non-profit sector in terms of how agentic AI could benefit yourselves. So as I said on the previous slide, the key one for us, it's enabling that personalized communication. It's looking at you, understanding you as a person, and tailoring that content. So leveraging tools like customer insight or digital and those to allow for personalized communications is really kind of key in terms of understanding the person, and those toolings, whether it's creating content, creating automated journeys based on actions, is all really, really interesting. The next one is kind of predicting donor behavior. So we've got the tool sets now, we've got the data, so we can do deep reasoning and using some of the reasoning models in agentic AI to kind of understand what this person does and what's the next potential outcome of that individual donor. And I'll show you that in a little bit in real life as an example of how we'd retain and look after a major donor. The other thing is, again, just more marketing, but just sending the content that's applicable. That's the kind of key thing here. And then major donor engagement, think of it as having like a team of interns just doing mass research on the individual, telling everything about them, scouring LinkedIn, working out who they know, who they're connected to. All of that's now a viable agentic AI outcome. And then let's look at more the kind of delivery side, how we do this. So outcome monitoring, again, agentic AI in the customer support kind of care sector is really, really powerful now. The whole scenario of asking for help, asking for information from a non-profit, asking questions, and then AI doing that first level of triage, maybe a chat experience that can answer 50% of the problem before then offloading to a human, or even understanding from that interaction, maybe sentiment analysis. How are they? How are they feeling? Does this need to go to a different person based on their phraseology within emails or chat? All that's now a real world thing that we have available to users today. And then looking at impact data, if we're doing program delivery, being able to kind of consume that data and work out what the gaps are, where we should be moving. And then finally, just as I said above, the agent chat experience, the ability now of any organization to be able to create a agent that consumes knowledge about the organization and expose it internally and externally is a really, really powerful thing. And the beautiful thing with kind of agent chat is there's a nice soft start there. You could start by leveraging a chat experience internally to kind of curate that chat, make sure it's ethical, make sure it's doing all the right wording, and then expose it to the internet 3 months later or 6 months later. So agent chat is a really, really powerful tool we've got available to us now in terms of how we could leverage some of the agentic AI. But let's kind of look at this in the context of Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. So today we'll be looking at some of the first-party agent experience that come with the core product, and also looking at the more Lego style experience of Copilot Studio, where you can kind of build your own agents. So both of them have really interesting use cases, and some of them are really, really powerful in terms of extending what the product can do. So first one, really, really interesting, is
I was just going to say,
Is,
Dave, it doesn't matter if you can't see the screens there, because we're going to be going into the product, aren't we? So
yeah, sorry.
okay.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, Tori didn't like my slanty screenshot, so it was purely so I could have a conversation about it more now. So I'm going to walk in and show this, but think of this as a team of researchers properly understanding who the organisation is, what's going on. So I'm just going to run through these slides really quick because I think product's better. It also shows they actually work, which is the key thing. So proactive sales agents, really interesting use case, and you can see here as you drip into the kind of proactive sales agent, just how much research it's doing. It's going down to real information about what money they've got, who they've last donated to, everything. It's like a deep dive into what that person means to you as an organization. Other interesting areas, which is really powerful, especially in the kind of care setting we're doing with a number of our clients here, is agent intent. So how are we getting on? Are we helping them? Are we moving in the right direction? Are we really looking at them as a supporter and trying to understand how we're solving their problems? Do we need to escalate the case to somebody else based on what's happening with an individual? So that whole ability to learn and reason with the data as it's coming through and proactively assign it to different individuals is a quite powerful message. We will show you some of that as we kind of go through. And then chat. I'll show you some of this working, but it's a really interesting concept of the ability of having a chat agent that's using a large language model across your own curated data and then bubbling out into a CRM system at the point when we need to really have that conversation. And then finally, the one I really like is data. AI is all about data. If you don't have the data set available to you, it's not going to help. But what we're starting to get now is the ability of some of these agents curating and building new data for you. So really interesting, again, in a customer support care setting. Every single time you do a casework with an individual, it's reviewing that. It's reviewing the 15 emails, the phone call chats, all the correspondence, and then making an agentic decision about whether that should really be a new knowledge base, and then writing knowledge base articles for you. So next time that donor or that supporter comes to you and connects with you, we've got that data available to the web agents, to the web portal, to maybe resolve that case before we even get to speaking to a human. So we're trying to offload some of that activity. So the whole ability of looking at a case, having a conversation, working out how we move forward, and it's a real thing now. And finally, which we're going to go into properly in the product later, is Copilot Studio. So if I'm being honest, Microsoft target this as low code, no code system developer. You need to understand what you're doing and the reasons why you're doing it with all of these products. So it's a great tool. It's more of I'd classify it as pro code, but it's great as a learning experience to work out what we're doing with the data and how we could leverage that data internally. So it gives us the ability of spinning up agents, giving it knowledge, deciding if that's a valid use case. So POCing different use cases of how you could use AI within your business is great within Copilot Studio as an initial POC, and then we can extend that and decide where that's presented to. So really interesting one that we're going to dip into and kind of go for that. So I'm just going to drop out my PowerPoint just for a second and actually go into a bit of product and walk through how this could potentially work. So we're okay on the Q&A as we go through, aren't we, Tori? Just checking.
Yeah, there's just a question. I've got an organization that uses Copilot with Dynamics and customer insights. And the question is, does it operate as an agent so that we could ask it to create content for a group or segment? So can it look at individual records and create the content? And how do they write prompts to get in there? So maybe when you get to customer insights, you might need to come to that.
Yeah, I will. I'll loop back around when we get to customer insights. So yeah, so what we're looking at here is a standard Dynamics opportunity screen. All we've done in this particular scenario here is we've gone into the platform and we've actually enabled, if it just opens up for me, those two tabs have just gone to sleep. Give it just a second. All I've done is I've enabled two different agents. I've enabled a sales close agent. So if we ignore the word sales, because we're not in sales, we're in for helping people, we're a non-profit organization, but actually what this is doing is trying to understand the sentiment of the person we're trying to ask for funds from. So I'm just going to dip into this agent and I'm going to go really geeky just for a second for you, just to understand the level this is doing. So this is going all the way through everything to do with that person, that opportunity. I'm even in here defining what the agent is, what my company does, giving it knowledge about my organization. I'm even giving it the research information. I'm telling it who I am, what my organization does. I'm defining what is our goals as a non-profit. We're trying to achieve this. And even dare I say, competitors. We do have competitors in the non-profit space. We do compete with each other for funding. I'm giving it the knowledge of who, if we're trying to secure funds, who do we normally compete with? All of this is being fed into the model, and I'm defining the outcome of our charity. I'm saying, actually, we're here. In my case, I'm trying to save dodos. It's probably a lost cause, but it's giving it that knowledge to curate the response it's trying to give to me. So all this is wizard driven. We're setting it up. We're giving it the knowledge. We're giving that information. But the end result is I'm asking Bill Gates some money. Yeah, I'm asking Bill Gates some money. I'm asking him for 1.2 million for a project that I'm running in 2026. It's just standard emails. It's standard chatter. But if I look at my summary here, I've got some initial summary in here in terms of what's going on, how long it's been open. But if I do full research, what it's going to do now, it's using the Microsoft researcher model, and it's researching everything about the data in my CRM system, everything it can find on the internet. And more importantly, if I want it to, I can also allow it full access to Office 365. So it could be trawling other people's interactions that we have permission to understand who else is talking to Bill, who else is talking to the Gates Foundation. It's doing all in the background to work out, actually, we're trying to ask this funding, but at the moment, I'm at a medium risk because we've stopped talking to them. We've stopped emailing him. He's not replying back. But you see here, I've got like, it's gone and trawled the internet, found some key buying decisions, when the last time that they donated to another organization, what they're doing. It's even finding the stakeholders for me. So it's coming in here and saying, actually, what does Bill do? What are the competitors? How are we doing this? It's trying to come through and build all of this for me. There you go. So it's looking at this. It's looking that I've been talking to Bill. Bill doesn't bother responding to my emails. I don't expect him to because I'm in a pre-sale scenario. But it's also looking at like the account overview. I'm kind of building into all these details of who they are, what they're doing. This stuff that I could have been trawling away on Google for hours trying to research, understand. It's pulling it all into a single pane of glass. It's given me that really interesting kind of insight as to what's going on. So that was the first use case, which is quite an interesting one. And then obviously, I'm being quite passive at the moment. I don't believe in this setting in 2026, we should probably have the robots talking to Bill Gates directly. But if we wanted to, just so everyone's aware, we could. So we could actually have the full user experience of it sending emails, it building personal communications, it writing an email in the style of yourself to somebody asking how it's going on. Have we trying to wake them up, trying to warm that record up? So it's there today. I don't have it on in my particular experience, but it shows where we could potentially be heading. And also we could be heading based on the type of funding we're getting. So all of this could be conditional. I could allow engagement on low value and non-engagement on high value. And having that criteria of how we do this could be just an interesting way of how we move forward. Even if it's just initial nurture, initial warm up, the whole AI pretending to be a real person, interacting with a major donor, a trust or foundation, having that conversation, warming them up before offloading to a human. So interesting scenario, and that's where we are today if we really wanted it to happen. The next area I wanted to go into is more around case management, because that kind of gives us a flavour of how we, again, other areas we could be using agents in here. So a little bit geeky, so I do apologise. So effectively what we can have here is, if we really want to, we can have autonomous case agents. So what I mean by this is it can start replying to emails, it can start reading the case, working out what the problem is, and a level of automatic replying as well, with the ability to offload based on the human at the other end. So the combination of using case resolution agents and get my teeth out in a minute, getting a qualitative intent agents means we can automatically do areas around types of case, who's saying it, what's going on, and route to both human and digital based on the individual and what they're asking. So a good example here is we could have intent-based routing where if they've asked for a particular issue, we turn the AI off instantly. It goes to a human. They could be just saying, how do I renew my membership? In that case, we've classified the case. It's just a membership query. They're asking how to do a direct debit. We could let the robots get involved. So that sort of context is where we're kind of getting to now. Let's slowly seep into the levels of AI and kind of understand how we could leverage that in the future. And that's the interesting thing for me is we don't need to go turn it on for everything. We can turn it on based on rules. We could turn it on actually saying these particular case types, let the agents play. The other ones, let's never let AI anywhere near it and let a human into the loop to make sure we're fulfilling them in a much better way. So as Tori mentioned, customer insight, we'll just quickly dip into that before we go into kind of Copilot Studio to kind of wrap up today, before we go back to some slides. So if you give me just a split second just to get back into customer journeys, there we go. So another good example here is how AI can just make your life a little bit easier. So I'm going to go into customer insights journeys. And first thing you'll hear is you've got a bunch of processes here, automated user experience. I could literally come in here and say, create me a journey. And the whole of customer insights now is AI first. So what I mean by that is rather than me clicking create a journey and going to an empty journey page, it's going to prompt me with an AI prompt of what do I want to build. So you can see here that it's going to now work out my segmentation based on my data, work out the steps I'd want to do in my particular journey, and even suggest some marketing content. So that's the interesting area in now. If we've got that data in a nice structured way, we've exposed the right data to customer insights, there's nothing to stop me saying, give me all my contacts in Coventry that have donated in the last 2 years and tell them about this event I'm hosting in 3 weeks. It's going to create you the shell of a segment, the shell of a journey, and the shell of some email templates. It's not the end goal. It needs curating, but it's giving you that building block. And internally, and with some of our clients now, we've always been using the AI elements of this as a training manual, a learning manual. Not everybody knows what steps to create at what point, but allowing the AI to build the shell of it means you're not trying to think, where do I start? A lot of this is actually, how do I start? How do I move forward? So that sort of reasoning model of having a conversation, telling it what you're trying to achieve, kind of gives you that way of really kind of utilizing AI to, again, reduce that admin load. And finally, before we go back to the slide deck, what I wanted to dip into was more of Copilot Studio. So what I've been showing you today is a combination of first-party agents that are included in the product as standard, and some of them are using Copilot Studio credits. And the really interesting thing for me is the sales researcher agent, for example, that we started with, is just another agent inside of Copilot Studio. So when Microsoft are building out new tech, new toys, new functionality, they're just agents in Copilot Studio, but they've done the hard work for you. So my sales close agent, they're just lots of mini agents that's looking at it. So when I was showing Bill Gates and who they are, what's really happened is a researcher agent's kicked off to look at the account, a researcher agent's kicked off to look at my competitors, and it's loads and loads of little sub agents that are just waking up, doing the hard work for me to find that information. But that's quite complicated. But if we even started something really, really simple to get your foot in the door in terms of AI, here's a good example of how you could simply start. This is Copilot Studio, nothing more. And I've just started with a really simple kind of HR policy agent. So I'm not exposing it externally, but anybody that's used ChatGPT, it's just the world's biggest prompt followed by some knowledge. That's the best way to think, because like entry-level agents is that. If you look in here, if I do edit, it's just a big prompt. I'm basically just really dumbing down and explaining them. I'm telling them what it should be like. I'm asking it to be courteous. I'm asking it to not hallucinate things. So I'm just telling it what it can and can't do. So see, offer consent, clear and professional responses. I'm telling it how to respond. I'm literally saying, Mr. Computer, can you do this, this, and this? And all I've done is given it a knowledge source. And that happens to be our SharePoint folder where every single HR policy exists. So great for knowledge bases, great for understanding what we're doing in terms of program delivery, great if you've got membership queries. We could just give it the knowledge, give it the prompt, and then expose this agent initially internally, then externally. And that's kind of entry-level agents. After that, we could have triggers, we could have tools, we could have topics, and all of those allow us to extend that. So it could be, I've got a problem renewing my membership. This could start with the knowledge. Next, it could say, do you want help, and ask you to do stuff. And at that point, these agents could call out to CRM or call out to other systems and actually do the interactions, create the records, create the membership details, or maybe create a donation if we really got to that point. But all of that's possible in that interaction and that chat. So conscious I've gone a little bit geeky, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoints just to wrap up. And I think we're okay on questions as we go through, aren't we, Tori?
Yeah, there's been no more questions.
Perfect. So let me just make sure I can get back to this. Okay. So key things on accountability and transparency. We need to make sure that understand decision makings. The nice thing was everything built within the bounds of Copilot Studio. You're seeing the reason, you can run in debug, you can see the reasoning models, you can see why it got that data, where the data came from. So it's not a black box. We can see and understand how it did that. And that's the key thing in terms of accountability. We need to know the reason why. What we can't do is just create an agent that doesn't tell us how it got it and just says the answer is 2. That's not an ideal scenario. We need that reasoning. We need that logic behind the scenes to explain every answer, why it got to that particular answer. And then the other thing is we need to look at the bias. We need the bias, sorry. We've got to be really, really careful, especially in certain use cases. The reasoning behind this is most of the research, most of the LLMs is based on a predominantly English, Chinese, French speaking data set. So that sort of context means that we're not always getting a fully multicultural experience, if I'm being honest, and it's training on the biggest data sets it's can find. Therefore, that's kind of Western world of that is the data. So depending what you're doing as an organization, we might need to supplement it with more knowledge to reduce some of that bias as we're going through, because it is based on a very large data set, but not a global data set, if I'm brutally honest. So, Tori, do you want to pick up on the summary and the kind of the last few things or not?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thanks, James. Just last couple of minutes. So, just in summary, we're really embracing Agentic AI in all our projects. And, it really does empower organizations to really be able to do more. But, very much in terms of looking at this sort of strategic and ethical adoption and, making sure we've got those guardrails in place. And, this is all only going to be dependent on how good your data is. So I think we've got another webinar coming up about data, but ultimately, if you're not thinking about AI at the moment, then obviously it's something that potentially we can assist with moving forward. And just really the next sort of slide, James, just in the last few seconds, just in terms of some of the other events and webinars that we're doing, we've got a whole raft on our website. Please take a look and register. If anybody's going to be at Microsoft Elevate in London, big event on the 25th of February, we're sponsoring that. So look forward to seeing you there. And we've got lots of wave releases for those clients that are on the call. Please dip into those wave release webinars as well as sign up for our roundtables as well. So yes, thanks very much, James. There's just one more slide, just 1 minute to go. And just really, if you'd like to talk more or understand more, please do reach out to us. We're starting to run quite a few workshops now on Copilot and AI. So, to assist you in getting your business case or your use cases or trying to sort of help, how you could potentially measure ROI for some of these tools. So please do reach out to James, myself, or your account manager, and we'd be happy to help. So yes, without further ado, hope everybody has a great Thursday, and hopefully we'll see you at another webinar or event soon. Thanks, James.